My name is Nathan, and I'm a product marketing manager here at Monograph. Super excited to be here with you guys today. We're going to hear personal stories and insider tips for building successful firms from folks who are living it out themselves. So first up, we have Tom Jacobs from Krueck Sexton Partners. Just as an intro to this session, as a managing partner, it can be difficult to balance monitoring a firm's performance and project delivery while still having time to do less urgent but often critical functions. Tom is going to give us an inside look at the systems and dashboards at KSP that KSP used to effectively lead, all while preserving time for critical activities like strategy, mentorship, and project engagement, all that good stuff. I'll go ahead and welcome Tom up to the stage, and he's going to take it away and share his managing partner Cockpit, and I hope it'll be of value to all of the audience today. Hey, Tom. How's it going?
Nathan. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Take it away.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be back with Monograph Section Cut this year. I'm the co-managing partner with Krueck Sexton Partners here in Chicago. We're a 40-plus person firm who seek partnerships to craft places of inspiration, community, and joy. And when I was participating last year at the conference, I basically talked quite a lot about the importance of transparency. And for us specifically, we are now almost 2 years into using Monograph products. And I was, showing a little bit about how these tools have actually helped us significantly with issues of transparency and basically everything from actual project data, but also including governance and things that actually affect the whole enterprise. And so what I would like today is, a year has passed, a lot has happened, and we continue to refine our operations. And as we have done this, that has actually led to quite some clarity about what we, and when I say we, I mean specifically firm leadership. So of course this talk is for everyone, and I'm not quite sure what the cross-section of the audience yesterday and today might be, but I actually also happen to believe that it is for leadership to do well, part of the transparency has to be that everyone in all of our companies has an ability to sort of see a little bit behind the curtain. And that's part of why I'm so excited to actually talk specifically about leadership issues. And I think by doing that, hopefully we can contribute to the overall idea of transparency. So I'm gonna talk to you about an idea, and then I'm also going to issue a bit of a call to action. So what's the idea? A few months ago, as I was in a project meeting, with a client that it's a highly complex and highly ambitious project. And our client basically made a statement that went something like this: we are flying the plane as we are building it. And that's when it hit me. I was like, wow, first of all, how true is that for this project? But also, what an amazingly apt metaphor for pretty much all we do in company leadership. Now, maybe it's just us, and that's part of where I'm super interested to hear from all of you, or from as many of you as possible, whether live during this chat or afterwards via email or whatever. But the idea that we are flying a plane as we are building it is really started something. And so that's where, I guess, because we were thinking about, or the metaphor was an airplane, that's where the idea of the managing partner cockpit was started. And this is where I would like to share a Miro board with you now that is basically the tool or the start that we have taken. And so here you see the cockpit. So far, no big surprise. There is, and actually, let me just I can show this even a little better in presentation mode. So here it is, the cockpit. It's basically, a control console, if you will, where all this data that is collected in a very comprehensive manner is basically brought to one point, and an interface point. And this represents the best information available in real time. And the people who basically are in these two seats are now able to have all this data right in front of them so that they can make the best possible decisions in real time. You will also notice things like the redundancy, the fact that there actually are two seats. And I think we're all really happy about that whenever we enter a plane. And, we have in our company, I'm the co-managing partner, as I said. Mark Sexton is my equivalent, if you will. And we've actually found that to be also quite a significantly valuable part of running the business. But okay, so here the question is how, what could a managing partner cockpit actually look like for an architecture firm? And as I was pondering that question, the follow-up question that arises is, who actually designed the cockpit? Because they all, now I'm not a pilot, so don't quote me on this, but I think there is certain principles that make for a good cockpit design. And those are, of course, there's improvements, innovations, but there's fundamentally a logic about what is the heads-up display and what's below you and what's above you, and so forth and so on. So I think you get the idea. That the question was, what could a managing partner cockpit look like? And this is where the way we started is that we basically put this into 4 categories. As an organizing principle for a company, that you have quadrants, if you will: people, the work, the business, and fiduciary. And what I'm going to do now is basically just zoom out here on this Miro board. And so what you're now seeing in the overall view is basically the current state of our KSP cockpit. Now, this is a burgeoning system. This has only existed for a few weeks, so it's very early. It's a very rough draft. But again, you can see sort of the 0 point is right in the middle, where you are reminded how the fundamental organization works. But if I just sort of go in, so now I'm going to take you very quickly through the quadrants. So here on the top left quadrant, we have people. This is basically a list of the people we have, a couple of reminders of what is actually incredibly important if you want to have a growth environment, the kind of culture that helps, psychological safety above all these other things. This is from a famous Google study that came out a few years ago. There's Lencioni and his book and work on the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So if you have issues of dysfunctional teams, there's probably a good answer in this pyramid of what may cause it. Above here, this is something I talked about last year a little bit. We call this the KSP Compass. This comes from our empowerment initiative and is basically, we just published it at the end of last year, and is a bit of a guide, a compass that says where are we headed, how do we do it, what differentiates us. And so this has become a useful tool as we are trying to hold ourselves accountable. And then at the top here is a little more, this is where it gets into, again, tools from Monograph directly, the resource manager. We have started to actually create our own versions of now tracking the planned hours versus booked hours. And this one here in the green is not filled out, but this chart, which I'm sure Monograph's going to do automatically for us only in a matter of a short few weeks. But this is an amazing tool, which we now share with pretty much the whole office. And it basically has bridged the gap between what is the sort of general firm expectation or the project expectation, and what is the reality of how hours are booked. And what has happened is that all of a sudden we know that the conversation about where can everybody's time best be used has already significantly improved. So we can now very easily with this data obviously track billable versus non-billable time. And none of this is new. I'm just trying to tell you how this has made a difference in the way we run the business, because you can see we had a little bit of a slow start actually. These are weeks here, so this was January, but right now we're basically humming quite nicely in terms of business performance. But you can see we have actually 8 partners, which is, I think, comparatively a relatively large number. And just tracking billable hours for partners had led us to then work into, okay, so we have to take more control about where we actually want the partner time to be spent. And so, this is just a very grassroots example of how using the Monograph tool and then sort of adding our own layers onto it helps us manage the people component. Now, going back to the cockpit, so here and sorry, I'm actually not sure. Hopefully I'm not moving too much, because I know how that can cause a little motion sickness sometimes. But here in the work quadrant, you see at the bottom just some references to really important, whether it's academia or leading people in the design field, that we also refer to a lot. If I zoom into our work here a little bit, you can see a snapshot of what's on our boards and what's under construction right now. This is work pretty much across the United States. And then something that we're also incredibly happy with or proud of that we were able to work this through. This is our sustainability action plan, where we've basically made a commitment and putting it on paper what we'd like to achieve. So down here under business, we have, again, some of the reminders of literature that's been very, important to how we operate. Basically, a bit of a reminder: let creativity drive the business, from RGA. This comes from their 10 principles. And I think this is a marvelous reminder, at least the way we would like to practice architecture, that the business value comes from your creativity. We are not primarily a business to make money. And by the way, no business is per the intent of what the purpose of a business is. And so at the same time, we do have to track our business metrics, so bookings, billings, collections, cost, backlog. These are all the things that, if you're in firm leadership or management, you know very well. These are the indicators we have to track. And then we have our business development strategy and how we're actually monitoring progress on that. And then here under Marcom, these are some of our handouts. And down below is a submission for a project that we just did. But you get a sense, I think, hopefully you get an idea of what this is all about. And then lastly, here in the bottom left-hand corner is fiduciary. And this is an assemblage of documents from here, how we actually structure the firm. This goes back to the 4 columns that organize the whole cockpit. An annual calendar where we track partner meetings and everything else that goes on. Here, the firm domains and governance. This is basically what I presented last year. And then it goes into vision. Things that we know how important they are. I think it's interesting in the survey question up front. A lot of people say we don't get enough time for firm strategy. And I know exactly what you mean and how difficult it is to carve out time, but there are overarching questions, big questions that are, ultimately the most important. And I've always loved this reminder by Jim Collins about people in our positions, people in leadership, the question about whether we see our company and how it operates as our ultimate creation. And I've always loved that notion that while we all love doing buildings and it's exhilarating to see a physical project take shape, but I think the ultimate responsibility of leadership is to actually design and build our companies first. So right, if we do our job well, we have growth environments, and then everybody can basically take off from there. So from here, so this is the cockpit. But I want to, there's something that I saw, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, and it's this from the Secretary General of the UN. And it refers to the latest IPCC climate report. It was just issued, I guess, on February 28th. And it talks about the human suffering and damning indictment of failed climate leadership. And I think this is I'm just taking us out way back to the 30,000 foot view of why I think this discussion we're having is so important, why for us to come together is so important. And I just think we have run out of time. It is now, we have a paradigm now, and I understand all of us need to have successful companies. We do too, and we have to be profitable, and all that is a given. But there is an elephant in the room. And it is the fact that we have run out of time, that we now have 8 years and 10 months left, or is it only 7 years and 10 months left to get to 2030, where we have committed to cutting our carbon in half, or actually going carbon free according to the AIA 2030 commitment. And so this is where, we have a new mission. And it's basically the reversal of what is talked about so frequently. We have an earthshot moment in front of us. We're either figuring this out now, or we will have significant consequences for humanity and all the living organisms and everything on the planet. And so what I would like to issue is a little bit of a call to action for an open source design for a firm operations cockpit. So what I've just showed you is our, early and a little cumbersome approach at a firm cockpit, but I think this is important. I think we're at a moment where we need to share these ideas or whatever helps for us with everyone else. We have in the AE industry spent way too many years building walls around our firms. And when we know something that we won't share because that's a competitive advantage, the time for that has run out. And I would literally be happy to share anything that you've just seen for the purpose of, and the other thing is, then the cockpit is one thing, but the screen on the back of every seat is even more important, because that is the interface that lets everybody else know what's happening. And this is the transparency argument again, right? We can only do this together. Leadership figuring stuff out is not good enough. And so this is basically where I'm going to, end on this note, that just a personal feeling that I think it's time for firm cockpits to be developed, that we hope if we do this together, we could probably come up with some principles that would be useful for everybody else. And as we do this, let's share. We literally don't have time to do it any other way. So I'm asking you to join the massive change movement. Massive change is a term that comes from Bruce Mao through his groundbreaking work with the various books that he's written about this. And you see my email address here, so let's connect. And with that, I guess we'll stop sharing, and I will also give it back to Nathan.
Thanks, Tom. Really appreciate that, especially that last part and that call to action. Feel free. We have a few minutes left. If you want to pop any last minute questions in the Q&A. One question that I had to kind of start the Q&A was, thank you for showing off that cockpit. Practically, how do you kind of use that on a regular basis? Like, how often are you checking back in with it? Are there certain elements that you're using at a, more regularly? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's basically two unanswered. I have two unanswered answers. I mean, right now, obviously, Miro, the whole idea is that it can be widely shared. Right now, this is sort of in version 1.0, and I haven't shared it yet. It's quite literally so new that we will obviously share it with the other partners, but ultimately, we also want to figure out that we do it in a way that pretty much everything that's on there can be shared with everyone, even somebody that was just hired. And so that's something to be figured out. And the other thing is on Miro, right? We only I post PDFs or JPEGs and so forth, and so it doesn't automatically update yet. So there's a potentially fundamental flaw in that, but I'm sure there's technological ways this could be figured out.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Really appreciate all the insights and sharings.